Okay. Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Rinpoche. Welcome back, Venerable Katsunla, Simonla. So yeah, we'll begin with the second session. Take it away, Rinpoche. Thank you.
Okay. Simon. Okay. Can you also pin Yakila and Simonla?
Pin us to the wall,
Yes.
against the wall.
That will be easy to focus. Oh, Simon? Okay, great.
Maybe Rinpoche, just before you begin, just to mention that for all the English speakers, Yakila shares on the screen, he shares the Hebrew version of the text. We also have the English version of the text, so we will now share it in the chat box. It also in the website, but in the chat box you'll see both the English and Hebrew version, so you can download it and look at it yourself while Simon is speaking about the text. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now let's continue. Okay. 벨라디네 유튜브 시당 페이지에서 치마를 왜 준비맵에 동원집이 치르. 아, 다디나로리아 디디스도가 케베 동열의 미수비 로게를 미차오스다. 캐바지 나세지. 땅아래 캐바디 동이 에 충무 충무질리 내양 에 딜리아 그소래 쇠세미 차바 델라 지기 년부된 토바 인지게면서 오월감 제토바지 아니 디네 년부 가서래 그 년부서 말다 가서래 내가 친구지인비 있나야 내려야네 샤바 제토야지 용구르 년배 아니 딘들이야 해바차디비 케베에서 오르바 따디 케바디 디날 덴데지 송도 이나야 딜레 떼트 카세르 땅바이나 단다 카산 얘기 님이 케바 두두 템베니마 에 공기 송디 나로리아 아니 게냐라 님 카사 기도 남치르 세치도 디케난조 디단 냠도 스토노 해보셔도 다 디니베 디리샤 카소레 지 카소레 캐버지기 지당 도스도스만 봐 요딩이지만도 정말 집어 입을 수 있어. 제장가 이니 카테서 인디펜던트 캐버세야 디나노 데츠지 카세르던 거 두루데베님이 제장가 두루데베님이 그 송디 대진이 사면치라니 표요 봐. 어디나라 직시 시다 디나라 직데지도 대양은 동해 강중 랑게르 네버드 준비 계절에 세주면나 지리 타교하던 데는 동해를 때문에 평연 뒤던 뒤 더부 톱도 여도 셔버 점식 망도 샘땅 난칸하니 쓰시다디 빼두고 말이에요. 저장을 디기 돈다 가르래도스나 두두 땜베님에게 디카도기다 고 사무당단 가르랍난 것도스나 아니 말한소 가서 그래 동해리아 동해 지기 세 삼로디 개조 믹스지 케용지 개조 제다바지 되게 지글이야 아니 삼로 땅도 땅시베 까블라 아니 간예 되지 태운디 개조 디기 아니 나네 파 지기 겐예리아 동해 제에 지기 삼로 고구리마도 아니 지단에 까년라 동네 최고르다 세역이 삼로 대점식이 아니 아주 지기 가서 그래 까년라 동네 제가 러베이나 아니 가점 측점 손으로 좀 또 냠로 지 가서 그래 소화제 지다 딩녀들이 얘가 까년들 동네 최비 세역이 삼로 나로래야 또제 개개요 말이스 제장가 개조지 캐용 그랬어 베나 드리니만 질린 얘기 알제를 카드 짜긴 세야지 충분히나 아니 드저 간에 지청도 알제지 얘기 고급지 샤르바다 드린 알제 좀에 고급라서 사비 세미나로 좋아지 돼도야 알제 좀에 고급라서 가와게 돼야지 베나 미다와 곰딩의 지지나 사무 든지 땅바 딜 때니 얘 되게 등진으로도 숙충 땅이라서 좀 고급지야 걔네 야채 돈수나 지게 당면이 섬로지 공원데 아니 최탐지 티기 비기니 지금 초도버지 통원도 준비 코랑이 면에 매나요 코랑면에 여봤다 보지 나와 되는 얘기가 동네체 도송 예별 아니 생규 추버디 수수 생규 추버디 수수 뭐신비 손로지 차야고 또 중보이나 아니 저 딘도지 중보이나 아니 해봤어 그래 세지 어디 그런 주 인지민지 단다 디 그러니 얘기도 하면 그런 얘기 디나 로츠와 하우스라고도 나 그래서 차베디 제르미치 차베디 토자고자디 피디에 말아도 좀 온라인에 제비 이 경계랑 obstacle taking obstacle to party 네 지티지 직대비 또 늦진데 샤르레스 아니면 다운로드 진 로빈 봐 가로스 로빈 저거 쇼스도 정말 찍어르지
And so if we sort of a little, reading on in the text, and we come to the next piece of the text, which reads, employing many reasons, a skilled person repeatedly engenders determination that is strongly intent on not giving way to a mind that cannot bear suffering. So here, that's the first piece of it. And here there's the use of this word, a skilled person, or as often translated, it can literally mean like a scholar, but it also means like, is also used for the wise. So in this sense, what are we talking about when we talk about a skilled practitioner or a wise person? What does this mean in this context? This is a very important point. And that what we mean here is that, so we're talking about, the context is talking about when relatively small forms of difficulty and suffering come to us, that we are overcome, usually ordinary people are overcome by them. But what this is saying is that the wise would, someone who is wise would be someone who is able, not only when small difficulties and small forms of suffering come, are able to have the ability to not be easily swayed by them, but also are able to rely on the antidotes and to practice things such as taking the suffering into the path, and able to sort of apply the correct antidotes in order to, and the correct forms of practice, antidotal forms of practice in order to do that. Not only can they bear these smaller forms of difficulty and suffering, but actually that they are even greater forms of harm or difficulty of suffering. They're also able to go through the same process of being able to apply the kind of antidotal paths of practice and be able to overcome, and overcome in the sense of being able to withstand or bear those greater, and then we would call greater forms of harm, difficulty, or suffering, and then we would call this person wise, or the skilled one, skilled in practice, or wise. And so actually, when I was looking up this text initially when I'd been asked to teach it, and I was looking up this text. So I searched online for something along the lines of obstacles, to facing obstacles on the path or taking obstacles on the path or something, and I came across a commentary by Dodrup Dembe Nyingma, who's a great Nyingma wise scholar, great, and in his text, I'll have to translate it a bit on the fly. In his text, I thought he gave a piece. He mentioned something, so I just came across it and I found it on Lotsawa House, which is a repository for translations of text. I found this, and I thought it was very appropriate and illustrated very clearly what is meant by being wise. And so what it says is it says, so for whatever form of whatever kind of whatever suffering comes, the practice should be if we're able to if the strength of our mind, if the power of our minds and the related kind of practices are not, we're not able to kind of infuse them or mix them with our minds, so then what will happen is so what he says is that I've been thinking about this a lot. Dodrup says I've been thinking about this, and if you whatever forms of suffering arise, the power if they're not mixed, if the force of our minds is not the resulting practices are not mixed with together, our practice is not sort of conjoined with the power of our mind whenever suffering arises. Then if so, normally the ones who are scholars on the basis of those who are scholars on the basis of on the basis of the suffering that comes are able to see how think to themselves. Sorry, if you have to mix them with your mind, but what the scholars are wise ones do is be able to think that on the basis of the suffering or difficulty that comes, that they feel that they've gained an opportunity or a benefit, and they'll say to themselves, where they will think, I have got this kind of opportunity for this kind of beneficial practice, and so when difficulties and sufferings come, we have to have this sense of being not just being able to overcome them. They're not just that a little bit like a confidence to feel that we can overcome them, maybe by applying the antidotal forces we can overcome them, but much more so that when those come, we've actually obtained an opportunity. So what Dodrup Dembe Nyingma is saying is that we've actually got some benefit. There's some benefit or quality to it, which is an opportunity for oneself. So then this could also be related not just when difficulty comes, but for instance when pride arises, when the circumstances allow for pride to arise in us, and then again the wise or skilled one will feel that they've actually gained an opportunity. There's this sense of actually gaining of something, not just the sense of being able to overcome something. If the opportunity for the meditation on permanence arises, this can also take place, and in the same way in selflessness, so that although all phenomena appear to us to solidly exist, they appear to us to exist from their own solidly and out there. If we're able to practice, there's a kind of delight in the mind that comes from feeling that we have gained an opportunity to understand, the selflessness, or to understand impermanence, or to counteract our pride, or to be able to. There's an opportunity that we've gained an opportunity. So this is very important aspect, not just the feeling that we can overcome it. So yeah. Yeah, so Yaki's still so that's so what Rimshi is what I'm saying is that there's that what Dr. Deminim is saying is that there is always an opportunity when whatever form of suffering comes, if we're able to join that we have the kind of power or strength of our mind, we're able to join that with our and mix it with our practice, then those who are wise and skillful in means and wise will be able to see an opportunity from that. And that's a very important aspect, not just the ability to overcome it. Yaki froze, I think. Yeah.
Okay, we have to wait for Yakila now.
Yeah, it's dropped. Yeah.
It seems that Weber Carlson disconnected again. We'll
Yes.
wait for him
Yeah.
a few moments.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm back.
And I'll post it. I'll translate this and post it. Yeah. Huh.
Wow.
This do.
네, 그죠.
אוקיי, מה היה הדבר האחרון ששמעתם ממני?
המרחק של השמיים והארץ בין המחשבה לבין היכולת.
אוקיי, אז אני חושב שסיימנו, אנחנו נעביר את השרביט בחזרה לרימפוצ'ה, לאסו רימפוצ'ה.
리베. 오케이. 올라서. 다 되네. 다 개베스에도 쓰죠. 다 되네 마. 개베 동열의 미수비 로께버 미차고 냠도 셈기 톱께발라 윤전 토마도 제베 냐바 양나 양도 깨버 차데스. 된대기다 개바스에디 된기 도르진 송셔유디 야고도가 된대기 기타 지컬 소리 녀비 톱께베 땡네 아니 동열이야 아니 동네 제단기 삼로틸라스 다디 제름 지송도 법계발라 균신 토마다 제비 냐바디 양도 제고르마도 차르직니 지 최지슈 아니 셈바드 초때 지기 야보를 제차비슈고들 당에 지송 삼삼대주요 말스 하고 초와디 제차비슈고라 양내양도 들었다고 자고 그랬어 제장가 제버차디 닝도 깨나사다 다 닝도 진지 깨버이나 아니 동해 침비된 동어 민주신 동해 충중 가시 동해 전부된 레벨이나야 니 간단히 얘기 내가 당금도 맞도 땡땡 뜰려야 지가서래 카드 짜마토에 요 말했으면 삼로 깨토레스 깨버차디 닝도 깨는 동해 침비된 동어 민주신 닝도 충신 단나 개대 된들기 삼로 당당지 매베이나 아니 간이 충주지 테베이네 디에 된다 쳤시라 매겨질 아니 지기 세미나를 지기 중보이나 양 아니 배 코란타 처음에도 다 미지기 보면도 아니 대만대면도 생겼선 로봇도 처음이죠 상상로 되는 그런 거로 와스 교대스 답배되지도 배디 디 남주 디 연하면나 간시 지난주 그게 이스라엘의 저절인데 여러배 된하라 되는지도가 보기스 라게 매베 차토나 바덴하고를 계신스 달메신 매베 차토나 게르신 보버리고 신어 세시도 다디 빼디 여러배인데 여기 여러배
다시 여사래 림푸체. 나는 배제 믹스인데 여사래.
어딘데 저기 다 빼디다 고마데스면도 어쨌든 같은 지기다 아니 양량도 좀 덜치네 예요레스
And so, in terms of thinking in this context that we've just discussed, actually, one thing I forgot to say from the last section was that Rinpoche is also saying that not just when we're feeling a sense of being able to bear things, or when the suffering is kind of when the situation is past, and it's actually the wise are able to, in that very time and moment when the suffering or difficulties come to us, that at that time they're able to bear them, have the sense of being able to cope with antidotes, but also being able to see it as an opportunity at that time, not later on. So that's very important. And then the text, the text to read. So reading again that piece of the text, employing many reasons, a skilled person repeatedly engenders determination that is strongly intent on not giving way to a mind that cannot bear suffering. If you become determined, even great suffering will not torment you. And if your determination is weak and your mind is feeble, even with that which is meaningless will become suffering for you. So there's this real sense of being able to overcome the suffering, but it's also very important. So it's reducing this inability to bear suffering and becoming determined. Then, as Rinpoche said earlier, even as I said earlier, even great suffering will not be able to torment you. And if you don't have strong determination, small suffering will cause you problems. So so there's this sense, if you are determined, you have this sense in which you're able to, and this process has to you have to train in it. It has to happen again and again. It's not just doing things a few times. It's this process, the wise are again and again engaging as being able to bear more and more suffering, and having that sense that they're able to take on, to challenge these situations, to be able to take on and challenge more and more. And if not, then what happens is that even the small stuff will discourage us. So if you have that sense that you can take on and challenge them, that kind of determination or spirit that does it, then you won't feel discouraged. But if you don't have that sense of being able to challenge and take on the difficult situations and the sufferings, unconducive causes and conditions, then even the small stuff. So if the small stuff, if you allow the small stuff to upset you, then you'll just end up thinking there's just nothing I can do. Life is really just, there's no chance. I got no chance at anything. Life has nothing. There's nothing I can do, and you become kind of very discouraged with this. So there's an example which is used in the text, which says, when a warrior sees their own bleeding injuries or the blood from their own wounds, their firm courage grows stronger. The coward falls unconscious upon seeing others' bleeding injuries. So Rinpoche was asking Yaki whether that example fits or doesn't fit particularly in the current situation, the current climate. So having that determination is important.
That's all.
람도 땅와라스 다 동연데 람도 땅와라 랑라되도 람도 차와다 셴라되도 차와니스 다 subject 자외 subject 니르도가 다 동연 람도 땅와라스 답변나 동연 람도 땅다 단단하도 땅은 도요 말이 동연 람도 켈도요 이내 동연 람도 땅도요 말이 다 단다 동연 람도 땅도 유년직라 송고요 봐 다 동에 람도 땅도 유년지라 아니 디 람도 컨디스 차고레스 디 람도냐 람도 캐르고도 람도 컨디스 차고레스 다 둡저리 누가 컨디치레스 아니 다 니바디 쳔라미데스 다 셴디 페젠 chanjugu 셈 방고디 마란주기 다 닌중dum게 파도점식 좀도 유년식체 니바디 아니 다단 신이기 나네 신접을 지킨기 상벌 요딩에들 신라미디 다디 먼저 봤으네 다 남자 연도 동랭기 냠내 지냈으네 다 정유선 냠내 지냈으네 어디 니버들이 다 당분들이야 아니 두벌 지난데라다 근데 지요를 슬라비나 대들 셴르미디 쳐원이다 당분이스 대들 셈기 뽑게니스 대들 동해 중말란데 수소톱이 시럽이 뽑당 안 덴발라 연된 점 비칠 가워 쳐버식데스 다들 수소톱이 시럽 세야되라 호화도마스 니잡 수소톱이 시럽 찍디 말하는 저기 빼나 다 시럽이 고하다고 되는 셔준도 레버다 니에바 야보도 두어니기 나로네 딜 가리케 체도 딜 총 가리마도 뒷다 투니에들라 레냐 넘버십 시럽 세고 알바나 뮤 딘데지 요디니에들라 딱 아주마 손에 동엔데 람르 케 마체나 합시 메딩에 손을 비지 다 아주 동엔 람도 마체발라 아니 동행 땅 아주마 손에 동행 수수기고 타면바 땅 아주 단답하도 제대해야 가르쳐서나 아니 동행이 중 아니 동행디 다 가르쳐 그래 동행디 순지 아니 동행들다 배전 하려기 탐람 드라면도 접제 제벌 도르드나 랑 소이네 아니 땅고나 땅치 땅 아주 사렌더 제차 아 다이나양 아 지기 동년디 람럽 추체를 용체 동년 람도 체체 아니 돈에 마체바 타베도 잠베 딘디기 섬로 요디니라 레냐 넘버 칩 시랍스 과지 거니바티 마란주기다 그런 동리고 고아도서 요데비나 동리 고아 요인디니지라 남샤 준부 아니 동번이 그 캡산치 가리어스라 두셈베 아니 아주 셈마스네 누루 뿌르들 다다 대토베치 지금 야보지 정도 점베 시오지 그 간로야 지게 매드니 두부지 정도 시오지베 돈로야 케미도스 디뿌르 대토야디 저 전주 심기 지 겨울함 지 양내도 송그래 전주 셈도였나 아니 시오지 간에야 전주 셈고 시오지기 아니 가르쳐 그래 기부 매베가라인 전주 셈고 도부 매베가라의 전주 셈고 즉 거도 니가 그 값으로 전주 셈도 중수데 셈도 따라되고 노송에 나신지기 단다 디가서 전주 셈 디니 수수도비 싫었어야지 아니 아주 변담 전주 셈 변담 그 전주 셈기 누버텔 때네 알아는 주기 아니 동해 시류점에 시부지긴 아주 텔야베 셴 방제베 하르고된 되게 선보디 용때지 막 까토베이나 깨초그래 용초그래 용그러 봐세 선보디 다음에 또 시라고 고아야 되냐들라 캡선 믹세는 도 여자 시단 디 고아들 니직 샤샤나 야보도 우섬산의 세상에 디기 디 수소도베 시랍 기 뻔당되나 덴발라 세디 연전 덴비치를 쓰도아 하테네 디 제수 아니 연전 딱 한번만 보여 연전 덴비치 가와차바시디 하테네 뭐디 가리 제오르스나 아니 세발레 예버를 준비 세바티에 바탕스 당보디치 테네 깹라 예템버 쳐봐 니바치 잡었어버 쳐봐 잡었어도 저백 또 향바들이 다 알아도 대즈랍이나 포초조 대즈만도의 직전쇼지 람산레기 사병 자와도부터 잡아들어 봐 잡았어버 쳐봐 디 잡았어버디 넘버 다 수버럽 잡고 아니 디벌 zem고 같다 아니 개발아 가와 아니 심전을 인지 잼비치를 쓰다 부주도가 부주도를 정도 semne 정도 치부리스
So then this next piece of the text sort of shows us, starts to show us how to start to, you know, train the way that we start to train our minds in using suffering on the path. There's a kind of difference here. So there's the two sections of the text are broken up into using suffering of the path has two sections to it. Using suffering of using it as a path in relation to yourself, and using it as a path through focusing on others. And I think there's also, before we even look at this, there's a slight differentiation that we need to make, in the sense of there's a difference between starting to take on you know, to be able to take up the suffering and to actually be fully using it on the path. I think there's a difference that can be seen there. So there's a difference between actually, and at our level, we may be able to, you know, taking suffering into the path in the sense of being able to withstand more and more suffering, but there's a difference between that and actually using it on the path. So probably at our level, we're probably, you know, at a stage where there's some ability to start taking it up, but not fully using it on the path. So that's one differentiation to make. Now, these two aspects, using it as a path in relation to yourself and using it as a path through focusing on others, I think we can also relate those to the two kind of minds, in a sense, two kinds of mind of renunciation, that of renunciation, a sort of individual, a sense of an individual sense of renunciation, wishing to attain some form of liberation, and then in terms of focusing, using it as a path through focusing on others, which would have more of the aspect of the path of the bodhisattva. So we can sort of put those two together. Now the text then reads, so the first section of that, using suffering as a path through considering yourselves or through in relation to yourself, and it says, having found the strength of mind, be glad when suffering arises, because it induces good qualities, which are requisites, or they are needed, for a powerful discriminating wisdom. So here it says that there's the powerful discriminating wisdom. So I think when we talk about powerful discriminating wisdom here, there would be two. I can divide it into two kind of categories. Through the power of that discriminating wisdom, it brings on or draws on certain qualities, and so we should, we should be glad. So in the process, when the suffering comes to us, the power of our discriminating wisdom is able to bring on certain qualities which should give us a sense of delight. And so the first kind of wisdom would be that general kind of wisdom where we talk about something which is able to differentiate between good and bad, between advantageous and unadvantageous, and so that we call it, you know, it discriminates between things which are kind of positive or negative, good or bad. But there's a deeper level of that, and so when there's a deeper level which would be you know, in terms of taking suffering onto the path, and there are often people feel that there's no kind of hope in the sense of being able to overcome the difficult situations, but when we're talking, here there's also this benefit of understanding that with the perspective of the kind of discriminating wisdom which understands the nature of reality, understands emptiness of the nature of reality, because the first one can still leave us a little bit hopeful, even if we're able to differentiate into what is positive, negative, that we still may have difficulties to take suffering onto the path, but the emptiness allows us, gives us kind of space so that if we have a little bit, we don't get so excited about things. We don't get, so we don't get really down if things are very difficult, and we don't also get very excited if things are going very well. So this is often talked about as actually a quality. It's actually talked about as a quality of bodhicitta, not getting too low and depressed and not getting too high. But then at that level, when we talk at that level of bodhicitta, I think we're talking about the level of bodhicitta, which is the ultimate bodhicitta, which is then the discriminating wisdom, understanding emptiness. And so this allows us to see the ability this allows us this wisdom, this powerful wisdom is almost like a cause for the things which are mentioned next in the text, which are that you will have a strong desire, that you will become determined to leave conditioned existence or samsaric existence. The second one says you will find confidence in refuge. And the third one is that you will dispel haughtiness or kind of sense of self-importance and bloated sense of self-importance, which of course is, actually I think haughtiness or this sense of self-importance is one of the worst of the kind of 8 worldly concerns. And it says that you'll be able to shun negativities, you will prefer virtue, and you will develop compassion for sentient beings. So there's this sense in which, so there are these 2 levels. One is a level at which we just taking the path in relation to ourselves, and one is focusing on the others. And then the powerful discriminating wisdom, discerning wisdom, as it says in the text, it becomes also in a sense, the other qualities which are marked as 1 to 6 in the text will become induced by that wisdom.
התרגול של הבודיצ'יטה המוחלטת הוא כזה שיכול לעצור או יכול למנוע מתודעה שהיא לא מאוזנת, שאינה מאוזנת, להשתלט על רצף התודעה שלנו. היא מונעת מתודעה שלא מאוזנת להגיב בקיצוניות למצבים של עושר או שמחה או של יגון או אומללות. אנחנו נוכל להביא לתודעה שהיא מאוזנת יותר עם תרגול של חוכמת הריקוד, חוכמה שמבינה נכוחה את משמעות הריקוד, שנקראת בשפת המהיאנה Ultimate Bodhicitta, או בודיצ'יטה שהיא בודיצ'יטה מוחלטת. אז נחזור להתבונן בטקסט של צונקאפה. אז צונקאפה אומר פה, מי שפיתח את הנחישות שכזאת, כשסבל יופיע, עליך לשמוח בו, משום שהוא מביא למעלות שדרושות לחוכמה עוצמתית שמבינה נכוחה באופן פרטני. עכשיו, במסגרת המעלות שאנחנו מפתחים, הן לא רק מעלות של חוכמה עוצמתית, אלא גם מעלות אחרות יכולות לנבוע מתוך התרגול שלנו. וצונקאפה מסביר את זה, שהוא אומר משום שסבל, עלינו לשמוח בסבל, משום שסבל מביא לכוונה נחושה לחלץ מהקיום הסמסרי, מה שנקרא באנגלית renunciation. הוא מביא לביטחון במקלט. סבל גם מסלק התנשאות, וכאן אנחנו יכולים לכלול בזה את ההתנשאות שמושפעת או שכוללת את 8 הגישות הארציות, 8 worldly concerns. מעבר לזה, סבל מביא להימנעות מפעולות שליליות. סבל מביא להעדפת פעולות מטיבות, וסבל מביא לחמלה כלפי בעלי התודעה. זה אומר כאשר למה צונקאפה מסביר את המעלות שסבל מביא לנו, הוא מדבר על 6 מעלות. הסולה.
오케이. 다 두시 드니 바토라 당분이 예스 다디 당보다 니버 숨바 참마 키원도 셈나라 카레 키워서 전에 아니 어 당부 이게 수만하신 대들 셈기 돕게니 셈기 돕게 당신에 송요 대 셈기 돕게니 아니 수수 돕이 싫어버세디 다 지기 남 수수란 게 남주디 돕당 템버지 수수에 쉬고라 아니 얘기 까니엘라 동린 체베 있나 니 연된 디단디 공배도 줘야 지도 다 공배줘야 당부디 가릴 때니 공배줘 두고 되게 섬슈요나 아니 그 섬로당만 지 가려야 줘 두고서나 아니 다 당부디 예 들으셔 텔라 당부네 레다 뇨모위 온게 지시 코어를 캔버 디시도 대단 된다고 동의게 내버려 코나임베스 다디 측도 내가 쇼충부 시브레 다디 도스만 로아셔디 고도 스제만 로아셔마 도지기 딜 섬로당 나 아주 디코라를 녀야 곰잡 디코라를 녀야 지 과 내에서도 깔리자고요. 그러죠. 코나임베스 됐다. 시그니버디 아주 코베기 내가 나라 아니 직기부 영향이 답시 쉬어지고요. 때지기 마지부 정부이나 아니 고연 나로 샤된 체제 아니 간예세야 되시도 아니 지기 남루 주야 되지도 정말 따고도 와. 오 가르전서는 딱 잡아가 한번 잡는 시치 따지고 봐. 먼저 뒤 가르 조 가르 따 뜬거 그러시나 삼로 디기 나로도 조 안주기 셈난 가르리고 마스도 코어를 캔버 디시도 대단 텐더비 등이 끝내버리고 하나를 스도 자원 니네가 돼요 말 다들 다 제고요 다 제장아 딩이거지 빼쇼 정보를 제장아 디 양내 양도 디 삼로 땅에 개침벌 코나 임베스 답변은 알아주 친이기 중 때제 아니 리글럼 장거로 아주 봐서 당연 장제 실리지즘 그 세제 쇼제가 답에 임바타 마임바타 쇼당 이쪽 아주면 순이 시주 아니 tempo 써야 돼 하고 써야 말다 템포치 템포 써야 돼 가르스나 랑게 탐자 강시ebe 변나 딘데로죠 코어를 캔버 디스도 텐더베 동의하고 하나를 세대 템포 써야 쳐도 아니 아주 따스당 카디부 시에고 저 따스당다 니렌 따보세 치 템포 쉬부서 기제 레데 양 참정 아주 여기 규도를 받잘 맞도 체체 아니 수미 따스당도 카디부 시에 퇴시 소소를 게 개미도 차기도가 다디 쪽 가르에서도 강낭도 거지 그거 좀 맞게 받아 냠해 마셔비기 내가래 마도 지게 그 지금 링엄 장부 될 때니 암제 때문에 걸었던 걸 수도 있겠다 코어를 캔버 디시도 된다고 동의가 넣어버리고 코나 임베 세됐다 레토버시 쇠토버시 제고고였다 근데지 뉴를 소소로 쿠르고도나 따바르시 딘지기 셈나로를 까니를 태운도 코나를 뒤다 임금이 바로 봐 동의 연구를 봐 동의 깨쇼를 봐 아치 동의 깨 유유 체베 쇼를 디고디 깨게 매번 막 쓰고 봐도 깨를 봐 세제 코도 이제 셈벌 펠로지 대 돈이지 유나 아니 배전 지기 가서 따서 당시 아니 임바타 마 임바타 장고고 요 말다 딜라 근데 소화딩이 요딩이 찍라 아니 신에 아니 그 가서 그래 타발라 또그 때문에 땅에 그셈 tembuji yewe kandele tenjo temro tanya de tongye choya da medaba ani gyudolen ji shukcher tanya ji ma do tenjegi shibza de zu janggo예요 말봐 세상 등 알아는 주 네네가디 빼슈치 보통 게 임베스 니한테 주죠
משפיתחת נחישות שכזאת כשסבל יופיע עלינו לשמוח בו. פה תרגמתי את זה משום שהוא מביא למעלות שדרושות לחוכמה עוצמתית שמבינה נכוחה באופן פרטני. אני חושב שפה קורא את זה באופן שהוא טיפה שונה, אני חושב ששתי הדרכים לקרוא את הטקסט הן אפשריות, לפעמים בטיבטית יש בה כפל משמעות, אבל אם אני אקרא את האופן שרימפוצ'ה קורא את הטקסט, הוא אומר, עלינו לשמוח בו, משום שחוכמה עוצמתית שמבינה נכוחה באופן פרטני, תביא או תסייע לנו לפתח מעלות, משום שסבל מביא לכוונה נחושה לחלץ מהקיום הסמסרי וכולי. זה אומר שאנחנו רוצים להשתמש בחוכמה עוצמתית, כמו שרימפוצ'ה הסביר, כזאת שמצד אחד או סוג אחד של חוכמה עוצמתית.
Yaki,
כן.
Simon is muted. Can we?
Simon, you're muted. Could you... Simon. Okay.
Simon, can you hear me, Simon?
Simon. All right.
Simon, can you hear us?
Simon. Oh.
All right. Can someone unmute Simon? As a host, maybe I'm a host, maybe I can unmute him. Let's see.
Ask him to unmute.
No, you can only ask him. You cannot force
Alright.
someone to speak.
Okay. All right. I think that... All right, I think he's looking at his screen. Okay. So I'll continue with the Hebrew translation and...
Maybe write him a chat. Maybe look at the chat.
I think, yeah, there are a few messages that have gone out, and maybe someone can also wish him a WhatsApp message. And so I'll continue with the Hebrew translation in the meantime. אז יש פה שני תרגומים אפשריים לשורה הזאת. רימפוצ'ה אומר בדרך שבה הוא קורא את זה, הוא אומר שחוכמה נכוחה שמבינה באופן פרטני מהסוג הראשון, שמבדילה בין טוב לרע, נכון או לא נכון וכולי, היא כזאת שאנחנו מטפחים כדי לטפח מעלות, באמצעות התרגול של להביא את הסבל לתוך הדרך, וגם אנחנו יכולים להשתמש בחוכמה שמבינה את השקפת הריקות. עכשיו אנחנו עושים את זה, צונקפה מסביר, אנחנו עושים את זה בדרך הבאה. קודם כל הנקודה הראשונה היא נחישות להיחלץ מהקיום הסמסרי. סבל מביא לכוונה נחושה להיחלץ מהקיום הסמסרי. וג'טסון קאפה אומר פה, כל עוד נמשיך להיות תחת שליטת קרמה ותודעות אוכלות, אנחנו נמשיך לשוטט במעגלי הקיום ונמשיך להיפגע אך ורק מסבל שכזה ושדומה לו. לכן עלינו לחשוב, אני אסיק השקטה של ההתעברות שמצטרפת למצרפים הנלקחים. כל עוד נמשיך לשמטט בסמסרה יאיים עלינו סבל רב. מעתה ואילך, במקום לחשוב שיש בזה אי צדק, עלינו לחשוב שזהו טבע הסמסרה. לא ניתן להכביר במילים על חשיבות התרגול הזה. רימפוצ'ה אומר שכשהוא קורא את מה שלמה צונקפה אומר פה, הנקודה הזאת היא כל כך מדויקת, כל כך חשובה עבורנו, עבור התרגול שלנו. ככה כשאנחנו בחיי היום-יום, כאשר אנחנו... Okay.
Simon, can you hear me? No luck.
Simon?
Oh.
Simon?
Was it unmuted? It wasn't. It was muted. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right, he has unmuted himself. All right.
Hang on, Yaki.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Always, all the way. You are muted. You're muted.
All the way. Go back to the beginning. All right.
Okay, sorry. I was muted. I think I muted myself. I wasn't muted. So I'll start again. Okay. Sorry, I was muted. I muted myself. So looking up at the top of the text, the earlier section of this, before we move on to the bit about resolution and leaving conditioned existence, I want to just focus on, it says again, under the title, using suffering as a path through considering oneself, it says, having found strength of mind, be glad when suffering arises, because it induces good qualities, which are requisites for powerful discerning wisdom, for you, and then it produces these qualities. So we have to have a sense of the sense of being able to overcome the difficulties and sufferings that arise, but very much this sense of gladness and also a sense of confidence that we can overcome them, but also the ability to, the gladness to be able to see the opportunity. So this applies to all of these, to see the opportunity for in bringing on the good qualities. So this is applied to all of these, which we'll go through now one by one. So the first one is the using these discriminating wisdoms, becoming determined to leave conditioned existence. And there's a very, so the text reads, think, so long as I wander in cyclic existence, controlled by karma and afflictions, I will still be solely harmed by this kind of suffering. Therefore, I shall attain the state of peace in which I will not be compelled to repeatedly meet up and conjoin with the appropriated aggregates. Now, the first section of that, as long as I wander in cyclic existence, controlled by karma and afflictions, I will still be solely harmed by this kind of suffering. Now, in the Tibetan, that is very difficult to render it in English, but in the Tibetan, that has a meaning that as long as you are wandering in samsara, controlled by karma and afflictions, the only thing you will meet is the harm of suffering. You will, and so in the the way that ordinary people deal with difficulties in the samsaric environment is often we just try to find ways to get ourselves happier within the samsaric environment. But what this is saying is, and this is should not be just at the level of simple thought or a little bit of meditation, but really taking on the kind of thesis, but really holding it as our kind of mantra almost. That's my word now. That wherever we go in samsara, there will only be suffering. And in the sort of pramana, the sort of epistemological texts, they use syllogisms, forms of logical syllogism, to sort of prove theses. So you could debate and discuss about this kind of thesis. Why, wandering in some cyclic existence, controlled by karma and afflictions. But but sometimes debate just happens in a way where people are not fully engaged with it. They pass forward, back and forward sort of reasons. But it's what we have to do is to not just do it on do it at the level where so you take on a thesis and you hold that thesis very tightly when you're debating, so that people will debate with you, and if you believe in and hold that thesis, you will hold on to it. So this is what we should do with this, where we really understand that there only is suffering. When we wander in cyclic existence, wherever we are, controlled by karma and afflictions, there is only suffering. And so and then if you hold that and you meditate on that and hold that very stable thesis within you, then when suffering comes, you will feel like, oh, suffering, yeah, that's how it is. Suffering can arise. There are causes. After the causes of suffering will arise. That kind of thing is going to happen. There's a more relaxed, we allow our minds to be more relaxed, and this comes about by really fully understanding I want to really stress this word solely, or it means only suffering. And then if you can really take that to heart, there's no need for all of these things like debate. And then of course there are higher understandings such as the paths of leading to liberation, such as understanding of emptiness and impermanence. But this is an essential thing to understand, that there is only suffering in the samsaric environment.
נוכל להפנים את הנקודה החשובה הזאת, שרימבוץ' אומר שזה נקודה קריטית או חשובה במעלה. כמובן אפשר להשתמש בכלים לוגיים כדי לערוך דיון במשמעות הריקות או ארעיות וכולי, אבל כאן רימבוץ' אומר שההכרה בכך שכל לידה סמסרית טומנת בחובה סבל, היא חשובה בחשיבות המעלה. לעשות.
나서 다 때네 다 코나 임베스 다 뒤 주고 다가랑래야 년년이 풍부 닝섬 저와 시와 다게 토벌 차오 제장가 남샤준도 타바 토바쇼 산제주 반 토바쇼 레라버지라 그래데 소화기요 안 졸라 초미기 어디 가르를 슬람나 단다 강마디요 말봐 코알을 내버 대세도 동행 버시 코나리 세계 삼로드 매베 슈라 아니 타바톰도 리그 말에 타바톰도 식문열이 갈래 연연이 부분 인점 주고 시와 세들다 더디 딘데기 시와데 톰도 레소나 안 타바톰도 이디나 신이 다가라다 나디 연연이 부분 인점 주고 시와 세들 조디 얘기 갱이 됐는거요 조디 콩드버디 귤라만알로야 요새에 이게 제만요 조 가르쳐서는 남셔준도 가지고 다 안에 가르쳐 그래 코웨자와 가르레 세도점에 안에 당진이 머리바레스 랍초죠 아니 동네기 자와데 가르레 머리바레스 랍이요 이나양 단대 중딩 로당 직당 아니 율라비 치기 나로리야 간데스 쇼르슬람나 동네기 자와데 가르쳐 깨와리샤스 깨와 노샤세티 딩아주 빼대고 구주 친구들 코와 나로리 깨와 다가랑 얘기 다 우리 친구 시우치샤스 늘 좋아하려고요 코와 나로리 깨쳐비 슈고라 아니 걔가 나 지금 동해에 달규 매바다 디띵도 아니 생각까지 먹고 참말로 지금 그도 동네 세대 주마도 탈답이요 말했다 거의 춘이 세트리디 대인도 잠배 다 디네 하고도 잠배 아니 그래서 그래 깨워내 매바 쇠바 될라 아니 깨워랭ken에 가르치네 공봉아버들이 공봉아버디 아니 바 깨워치말마 아니 레다 뉴모 온기 깨워내 매바 쇠바 다라 안디 시워봐 어디 이제 베다디 몰람당 아니 식도 사고 싶으리 다디 비식들 흘려 지금 상당히 지금 연샤비나 샵된 첨부 시브레디 아주 부자 믹스의 제거예요 말다 다디 개심 시브레 아니 얘는 이 부분이 좀 저와 시와 다게 토벌 차고 쓰도 다 딩문에 전에 식지 너무 첨부 뒤 첨부 편도 빼 첨부를 치래 나한테 니 워들라 가르도 양조세를 단지 시브르 참친지 동해 투미 지원이 미워버시 중화 예인지 코행 주의노 냐도 선보 미워버시 중화 마인지 있어 코알 레차비 슈글라 아니 컴플린트 개개요 말스다 어디 야고도 와 코아나를 레차네 응아지부면 지치면 무대베이나 코알레 타르도 게 제도 무베이나 드브르스 마도 지기 코웨나로 데세베 슈글라 아니 지기 코웨나로 지기 리그면 닌드그면도 슬랍세베 슈글라 아니 가르쳐 그래 라는 지금은 저가서 도시되는 조지에 니 차반 나서 지금 여러 시에 되어 지고랬어 도시된 와서 이 달로도 남아서 남편도 미상과 차반 나고 그거와 그 진랩 상담 진랩에 양고 강해질 수 없는 강해를 봐. 세상 어디나 시치. 간지 그걸 내차비 쇼라 디마도 또서 요만 안디 디지 좀 보이는 아 컴플레인 체크해면서 코와 나로라다 다가란 대사는 요멘도스 다 딜레 타르바지 최고도 세 삼부터니 셈바오 슬랍도 좀 덤치 보이는 뒤치 보여 보시도 어디 지송다
And so, yeah. And so the next piece of the text, the next piece of that, so it says, I shall attain, so the next line says, I shall attain the state of peace in which I will not be compelled to repeatedly meet up and conjoin with the appropriated aggregates. And so this is sort of this is very important in relation to the wish to achieve liberation and the relationship with that and the appropriated aggregates. So this is if we just sort of sit there and sit on our cushions and just say, oh, I wish to attain liberation, I wish to attain the fully enlightened state of Buddhahood, then really there's no real feeling in it. There's no sort of real feeling to it. And so we need to be able to, without having these kind of strong understandings and theses, which I've mentioned here, for instance, I shall attain the state of peace in which I will not be repelled to repeatedly meet up and conjoin with the appropriated aggregates. So that kind of holding that kind of determination is something which will fit which will to some extent fit what is the definition of the sense of is sort of wishing a wish to achieve liberation. That would fit something like it, because it wishing not to be compelled to meet up with the appropriated aggregates. So seeing the appropriate aggregates is the problem, and often we talk about so then we also have to understand what is the root of samsara, the root cause of samsara, and often it's said in many of the texts that grasping to an inherent self, or grasping itself, self-grasping, or often ignorance is stated as the kind of cause, the root cause of the samsara, driving us in samsara. But in my teacher often has mentioned there's a scriptural source from the Sublime Continuum, the Uttara Tantra, and in that text it talks about the root cause of samsara as being birth, as being born, and so birth in samsara as being which is actually the root cause of samsara. And so we have to have this kind of sense in which that birth leads to is the root cause which drives us into samsara. And so then we can, if we have that, then we can understand here the piece of, so for being born into the samsaric world with the appropriated aggregates, and then and what tends to happen is, once we're born like that, when difficulties arise, what we do is just try to counteract those difficulties in a very direct way. But those difficulties themselves are in the nature of the nature of that's the reality of samsara. And if we're born into the with the five aggregates, then those suffering and difficulties are going to be the nature of it. So it doesn't work for us to just directly counteract them. So having these are the best kind of, instead of going off and doing what we call shabdhan, the kind of practices for different kinds of prayers to be done and stuff like this, the greatest meaning of all would be to take these kind of understandings, such as, so long as I wander in psychic existence controlled by karma and afflictions, there will only be harm from suffering. There will only be harmful suffering. Or that continual meeting up with the appropriated aggregates, being born with appropriated aggregates, will naturally lead to a reality of suffering. And therefore we should then feel the wish for liberation should come from this, that there's nothing good in samsara. For instance, and we have to look at it like that. It's like going to Bodh Gaya and saying, sort of going to Bodh Gaya, so, obviously for great spiritual reasons, and saying you kind of got sick. And last year I didn't get sick, but this year I got sick. Or as some people will say, it's a blessing, or however you deal with it. But we're still in the world, the realm of samsaric suffering. And so, we're sort of complaining. So, as long as we stay in the samsaric world, we shouldn't really have. There's no other way. There's no way for it to be anything other than it is. So we shouldn't have complaints. From that understanding, we understand that how samsara is, the fact that it's no good, and then the wish to achieve liberation comes. But these kind of mantras, so to speak, these kind of practices of remembering these things would be the best kind of puja, shall we say, kind of when we do Shabdan and we ask monasteries to do prayers, but these would be the best way. So really understanding what samsara is, how it occurs, and the problems with it. And then it reads, henceforth, so long as you wander in cyclic existence, are endangered by a multitude of suffering, instead of thinking that this is something you do not deserve, it says, think that this is the way samsara is. So you just understand that is how things are, instead of being born in samsara and then complaining about the things in samsara as being suffering, which is its very nature.
אנחנו לא מספיק עם התלונות, אנחנו לא מתלוננים על הסבל הסמסרי. אם אנחנו חשים סבל בסמסרה, מה שעלינו לעשות זה להשתחרר מסמסרה. לעשולה.
그래서 나한테는 세마고서 이봐 다 당보 코웨니 주도 섬로야고 저 코스비 슈고라 다 니버디 접선 로바들이 다 접선 로바디 컨트리스 지지 알비 섬로 뒤여디니 데라 컨트리스 팽기도스라나 시비 지발 렌레레데 니니자 마임베 띵타 매버 참네 스타 지버디 동해와 라껴봤네 로아메베 권조섬 냐 찍도 세베 디시 자 탐지도 찔러 투장 권조섬 땅에 차고 냠도 냐바 치데 저도 도로 저보 손을 다 저정가 말한조 년리야다 띵다메베 코아스 다지 야 시즌에 원남에게 봐도 다지기 계좌 남주 시거 얻다 가지고 뒤 남상 가수를 롤 추면 와 다디 섬을 야고지 땅베나 말한도 전불링된 나로야 다 기부 용해하기 쳐도 동해 용해야 동해만 매버 수액 치도 기부 약슈데 있다 동해 매버 수액이 기부 약슈데 가르랬을라도 전배 아니 민당 아니 벤조니도 좋나 세지 섬을 열미 상으로 다 민다 벤조니가 용해 딜라양 당동양 고치기 기부 유액이다 용해하기 차진 열에대 다가도 지기 단도의 수수 동행기 동행될 랜드 잡투도 봐. 디 개부인에 다가르샤 나르기 개부인에 다가르 저런 것은 본부 지시인에 다가르샤. 술리네 딜리에 다 기부 용해 매버데 아니야 다 쳐버다. 전부린 다가랑 섬 당비나. 디 뉴스베타 란즈기 지기 샘레 펜버스네다 아니 동해를 내베기 동해를 지기 동행시에기 너버디 다 단다 봐도 탑시 지지지 미그 삼로당단 리서치 해베이나 다 야가지 주니 녀매봐 다 지기 뷰 타고 지당 땡부지 야고지 니주매버데 타주 쥐네 봐 근데 띵더매봐 네 손데 다 띠는데 야지도 세배 세야지 루어매고 꼰조스는 야지도 세도 전배다 꼰조 파지역으로 봐 파지역도 전배 세상 같아 지금 니나로라 다 폐진 전부링 디나를 쓰는 데도 전부링 디나로라 아니 순배집이 예배나야 관인근 동네 세에게 탑시했더라 규변조다 민당 담년자다 그리 들은데서 순배지기 삼로날 여베디기 펜토마소스 디타치 디타치에서 쉬고들라 다 된제니 얘기 아니 간이 용서기 자원라버데 용서디 얘기지 셈모rum보다 아니 바도 짐비기 용구 여버디 세보 치제 라트웨 원도 준비 탄 딜레직 탄나마도 주마송 녀베 로께바탕 덴제기 주마송 하바토나마도 주마송 세기 덴제 타르바디 남규가 저기 주접도 말다 제접 자송아 덴제기 제접디 알아야 템버 쳐봐 템버 잡탕보 봐 템버티 니바디 덴제기 제접 디당 니 빼다사 중고대 왕발롱 고된 주벌 시비기 아니 빼다사디 나도 코랑이 줄려 예배 고대디 말고 그도스 디 최근조 덴도기 최대당 더블라나 매버 니디 최바장이 마펜바 아니 아주기 environment force 그디 community 나로네 연구여자 community 상가 community 상가를 리뷰치기 다들 잠배 나버산지비기 점로 체단디 점로 체단 신나면다지 조 가르도스나 당인 다긴 그 세야다 마랑 아래기 숨겨 마랑 지긴 세게 쳐도 미션 로봇에 되어 마도 지게 나 가게 연구민도 나 가게 연구민도 안갈래 잡나로나 세드 싸워니는 나버산지비기 잡지다 점도가 니인도 니바디 시비 직발라 내려다 니좀 많이 뭐 띵더매버 참니 지금 데도 동네 너무 와라 껴바네 로아매버 권조선 야지도 세배 세야되다 그때 지금은 실 쳐서들이 디치를 껴와 탐지도 찔러 도저 권조선 땅함이 차고 시도점배 딘체기 아나가스 말이야 니 규지 대접대 맞춤 못 봐도 니 규접대 남이랑 그랬던 거 베스 때 야고도 와 야와치는 니 caption 저걸로 좀 봐오선 딜러 준비 된 거레스 어때 송도
ואחרי הנקודה הראשונה שמדברת על הנחישות לחלץ מהקיום הסמסרי, הנקודה השנייה שג'ייסון קרפמן מזכיר או מלמד.
And so the first of these categories under the using suffering as a path through considering yourself is the becoming resolute in leaving conditioned, the wish for liberation to leave conditioned existence and the understanding of the state of samsara. So then we come to the second of these categories in the text, which is finding confidence in refuge. And first of all, I'll read the text. It says, having wandered through the terrors of cyclic existence, not just once or twice, but rather without finite depth or limits, think that with such fear, the sole protection from suffering is the non-deceptive three jewels. So that's the first bit. So then we're thinking about the sort of how does what we've talked about before benefit the taking of refuge. And of one very important in here, one of them it says about wandering through the without we've wandered through the terrors of existence without depth or limit. So from that, without any sort of, it's almost fathomless. It's like bottomless. But what it means is the sense that for instance, when we talk about the extent of samsara, we talk about it from the highest point of samsaric life, the peak of cyclic existence, and down to the lowest forms of the beings in the hell realms. But this is something that when we hear it, it doesn't really sort of acculturate to it. It doesn't fit in our minds so easily. So if we think of it more like in relation to this world, and then trying to overcome, to banish or overcome the different forms of suffering, and then also trying to attain the highest states of happiness, then the way that ordinary beings try to achieve these things of getting rid of suffering and achieving happiness are usually through such things as having renown or fame, of having good name, and particularly through good economic circumstance, through wealth. And they sort of so that's the way that it's normally done by ordinary beings. And so, but you can go from, if you look at the highest states of sort of in life, in society, or in the world, even the great kings or powerful ministers, we see that they still haven't been able to overcome suffering and find that kind of, they haven't achieved a kind of stable happiness and been able to counteract or overcome all of the suffering. So we can see even in this world, not talking about all the different realms of existence, but just within the world available to us. So we can see that all of these things like name, fame, wealth, good economic circumstance, all of these things, what we need to do is need to make a very firm, decisive understanding that in this world, whoever it is, those things have not benefited in being able to overcome all the difficulties and create all of the happiness. And so this is then related to so that's the sort of depth or limits of the samsaric world. And so then it says that, think that with such fear, the sole protection from suffering is the three jewels. So then this is the important sense of where to take, the refuge from that. What is the best and stable form of refuge for us? So it's not wealth, fame, and away from fame, those kind of name, wealth, fame. And here, when we talk about the three jewels of refuge, we need a very important context. We talk about when we're talking about so the sense in which we have to, it's not okay for us to remain in the samsaric life, but wishing to, it's not okay if we don't attain the liberation. But and what we're talking about here, sometimes the resultant refuge, and also sometimes the causal refuge. So, for instance, when we're talking about wishing to attain liberation, that is the kind of, or the fully enlightened state, that is the resultant refuge of ourselves. So the refuge that we will become, the future Buddha, if you like, that we will become. But also in terms of the Dharma jewel, we take refuge in our resultant cessation, the cessation of the afflictions and of samsara and suffering, but also we take refuge in the causal refuge, which is the the causal refuge, the causal refuge of cessation, which is the cessation in the mind of the former, the founder of the teacher, as we call him, the founder of the teacher of the Buddhism, of the Buddhist, in our world, the Buddhism, the Shakyamuni Buddha. So he's like the founder, and we take refuge in his cessation. And then, of course, the refuge in the spiritual community, the Sangha jewel, those who are around us, our environment, and the spiritual community in the environment around us. And so these, so then it's saying, it says, so that's the non-deceptive three jewels, the stable things which are the best refuge and the most stable. And thus, the text reads, thus become resolute by thinking that whatever you might encounter in all your lives, you shall not forsake the three jewels and make effort in going for refuge. And then this leads us to this sense of where it says in the text, become your own protector. I will become my own protector. So you don't have this kind of helplessness where, I can't, the sense of I can't do anything, please help me. We don't have that sense of, we don't have that sense of, helplessness and, kind of sense of please help me, of pleading to the jewels for refuge. We have this sense in which, of not giving up, of relying on the three jewels in this way, but not being a kind of pitying help. It's a way of taking proper refuge. And so then it says not encounter normal lives, you should not forsake the three jewels and make effort in going for refuge. So never giving up, and your reliance on the three jewels.
מאחר ונשארו לנו רק מספר דקות מועטות להיום, אז אנחנו לא ניכנס אל תוך הנקודה הבאה בהסבר של למה צונקפה. אנחנו נשאיר את הטקסט היום, ורימפוצ'ה יחזור אליו וימשיך ללמד את הטקסט הזה מחר. אז אנחנו נסיים את המפגש שלנו היום עם רימפוצ'ה, ובעוד שעה אנחנו ניפגש שוב באותו קישור לשאלות ותשובות או דיון אם יש לכם, לאלה שהם דוברי עברית. הדיון הזה יתרחש רק בעברית ולא באנגלית. אז אנחנו נסיים להיום עם כמה תפילות של הקדשה. רימפוצ'ה נעצו היברו כתורלה ג'נה.
지그리 야고도 안되기도
אוקיי. בארץ זו המוקפת רכסי הרים ושלגים, מקור הרווחה והאושר ללא יוצא מן הכלל. אבל לא כדי שווה הרע ועוצמת אין זינגיאצו, ולא תיוותר עד קץ הקיום. בזכות חסד זה לו השיג במהרה את מצב הגורו בודה, ולהוביל למצב הזה את כל הנודדים עד אחד. לו תודעת ההערה העילאית תקרת הערך שטרם נולדה תיוולד. לו זו שנולדה לא תתנוון ותזכה עוד ועוד.
They're reading a series of dedication prayers. I'll just read them very quickly. I'll just get them and read them quickly. So there's prayer for long life for His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of happiness and all good. All powerful Chenrezig, please remain until samsara ends. And then I'll read them tomorrow.
전바 초대 가와 밤에 있는데 님부 전에 주버데 타반 시기 배워 주냐면 넘버 주변이 전다고 쇼 라섬 답에 추도 좀 받아 찬도 뭐지네 좀 런던 나블라서 좀에서 예와면 봐 다도 조제 쇼